This is the headline that's garnering all the attention today.
All the evidence shows there's a investment boom going on.
Markets are looking for clues about the health of the job market.
Artificial intelligence absolutely has already been a disrupting force.
People are right to question how much longer this bull market can run.
With stocks rising, fueled by big tech and easing trade tensions.
This week, the Fed voted to lower interest rates another quarter of a point.
Take a look at futures. Now a little bit of a mixed bag. We've actually seen the Dow tick lower.
Oh boy, here we go again.
It's time to tune out the noise and tune into great information with A Steward's View. Expect valuable economic updates, investing techniques, and planning concepts that will move you to be wise and decide well. You'll be equipped and encouraged in a stewardship mindset, managing God's resources 1 week at a time. You can listen to this podcast and previous episodes at astewardsview.com.
Welcome back. It's August 24th, 2026. I'm Aaron Kolkman. That's Lucian Gendorf, and this is A Steward's View. This is a program dedicated to the integration of knowledge and wisdom to enhance your decisions as stewards, with or without financial professionals. Today on ASV, we'll pivot to financial planning and trend towards the basics. We'll equip you to approach your situation in a holistic way, avoid common pitfalls, and find some peace in the midst of routine decisions. Before we get going, let me direct you to our weekly blog, which is live by midnight every Monday. You can find that out with our scripture for the week. That's our context that we are working from and even praying from and thinking from when we do these weekly efforts, and then also the weekly roundup. That's a summary of what's happening with the economic picture around us and the various markets activities. So you can find all of that at astewardsview.com/blog. Again, astewardsview.com/blog. So this week, I want to touch on what has become a moniker in the office since we spoke it on this program a year ago. And I say the office. There are offices at Fideer Advisors and that group that I operate, that little firm that's sponsoring this program. Okay. And we've got this this moniker, and it goes like this: what does your dynamic puzzle box look like? And it's really simple, isn't it? We have two primary financial statements that we need to make decisions. And the most important thing, it's amazing to me, I'll say it this way: how many businesses have a set of financial statements that they're required on some level to have to make decisions from, and to share, perhaps with investors, perhaps with regulators, but they do this all the time. And it's their balance sheet and their income statement. So the balance sheet is, what do I own and what do I owe? What do I own? What do I owe? The income statement is what's coming in and what's going out, right? There's another financial statement that I won't talk about in this episode called a statement of cash flows that kind of connects the two. But those are the two primary. And you hear an income statement called a P&L for small businesses. So that's another reference, or in household terms, it's often called cash flow. So I'll just ask the question rhetorically: why wouldn't we have a current copy of those two financial statements all the time or regularly, like businesses, when we talk about individuals, right? Why wouldn't we have that available to ourselves? For what? For good decision making. So I want to encourage that in this episode. I want to encourage you to know what you own and what you owe, like specifically the exact dollars, and then what's coming in and what's going out. Okay. And recognize when you put them together, and I'm going to kind of tease out the decision-making part of this. If you have an extra dollar come in your income statement, that's truly extra, it's positive cash flow, right? I didn't need the dollar to cover expenses. Then that dollar moves over to the balance sheet, and it does one of two things. It either grows our asset base, whether that's cash in the bank or some investment, maybe both, goes into those things, or it reduces our liabilities, right? What we owe, right? So we could pay down some debt. Either way, it's flowing onto the balance sheet. So the opposite happens when we have negative cash flow, even by $1. That missing dollar to break even, so to speak, had to come from the balance sheet. We had to borrow more money. We need to sell an asset, maybe both. So that is the interaction between these two and the reason that the two go together. So what I want to do is highlight for a moment some of the myths that happen and hopefully to help avoid some conflicts that also happen in human relationships when it comes to the topic of money, where these four corners of a puzzle box are concerned. Okay, so I'll give an example that's very common. At Fidelity Advisors, I hear, well, my expenses are too high, right? We'll talk about retirement planning or cash flow planning or income tax planning or whatever relates to this topic, but expenses are too high. Okay, well, what does that mean? Well, I don't like my expenses. Okay, so you don't like the $6,000 a month that you're spending to live. Okay, you're making 10, but you don't like the 6. All right, well, that's an honest statement. You know, how does everybody else in your household that's a decision maker feel about that? That's a question. But at the end of the day, you're not negative cash flow in that situation, right? So you may want to reduce your expenses. My point in this program is that the expense base doesn't mean that you're being a poor steward. Could you be a better steward? Maybe. What are you called to? How might that look? But for now, let's just agree that expenses by themselves are not the full analysis. Cash flow is. And I'll ask another question with that. Are cash flow and budgeting the same thing? The answer is absolutely not. So those two phrases get used in an interchangeable way. You know, and I'll give an example. I ask every new client at Fidelity Advisors, you know, are you willing to have a budget? Right? And I think there's like some kind of a like negative connotation around the word budget, because most of the people that answer that question say no. They don't want to have a budget. Okay, they want to be able to live without one or not have to think about it or what. There's no why behind the no. I just have to kind of guess what the person might be really thinking or ask about it. But the point is that whether the person says yes or no, we're still going to look at cash flow. We're still going to look at what's on the income statement, right? So we don't have to say, well, your expenses are $6,000, you got to keep them at $6,000. We'll set a target for sure, especially in retirement planning, but that is not the same thing. So saying yes or no to a budget is not the same thing as, you know, refusing to look at cash flow, which you have to do when you're going to do any amount of financial planning, you know, in basic form. So I just want to distinguish between those phrases when we say, you know, an expense budget and cash flow. Cash flow is money in and money out, right? It's income and expenses. Budgeting is just typically the expense side, okay, or the expense piece. So let's clarify that as well when we go through this. Debt in the same way as expenses. So now I'm over on the balance sheet. I've got what I own and what I owe. Debt is probably the number one source of conflict in households, right? I could tell a few personal stories recently where I've met some people in my personal life and, you know, if you have an interest in what my own financial picture is, and I'll talk about it, and I'll, you know, make a point to not just talk about assets and not just talk about debts, if I'm going to even talk about it at all. But the point is that if all we did is look at debt and say, oh, well, I've got a mortgage of $250,000 or $500,000 or whatever it is, and not look at the asset, this happens all the time. Instant anxiety, instant stress, regular conflict. Oh my goodness. I have so much debt. I have $500,000 in debt on my house. What am I going to do? How am I going to ever retire with that? Well, you've got a $3 million portfolio. You've got a pension, a Social Security income base, and you're married and your spouse is working part-time. Your cash flow is $10,000 or $5,000 a month positive, whatever. And yet we're honed in on this debt load. Okay, well, that's a debt-adverse person. That's fine. There's nothing good or bad about being debt-adverse. It just is what it is. But let's not isolate the debt corner of the puzzle box. Let's take that with the asset base. You know, in the house example, $500,000 mortgage on the $1 million house. It's $500,000 in equity. Okay. Same thing with the cash flow or really income statement, right? Now, when we put them all together and we see what cash flow is doing, I write about this in the life cycle book, and I'll make an offer on this by the end of the episode for a free copy of the book via PDF that's still available from the previous iteration of publishing. But if cash is king, cash flow is queen. And that's the subtitle of one of the chapters. And it just says, hey, if you haven't built up your balance sheet yet, that's okay. How's your cash flow? Right? One of the most painful things I've ever done for anyone, including my own family members who, let me be clear. My children, who I love, all three of them, I've asked them to, Lucian, I don't think I've told you this, to do a cash forecast based on their cash flow. How much cash are they going to have in the future? Because they're starting out, right? And so it's painful because it's not fun to sit there with a spreadsheet for a couple hours and try to, map every expense that you have every month and then forward that out and do the same thing with your income, especially when your income is random, you're working part-time, you're in college, you're, trying to figure it out. But the comment is that if cash is king and you don't have a king right now, you might have a queen. So I want to encourage that for anybody. In fact, I'll put this out on a stewardsview.com as well tonight in our blog, along with that chapter I just mentioned. So there's an answer for anybody listening that's wanting to dial into this. But financial planning firms do not make money with cash flow planning generally. So I spend a lot of time at this because it's so critical to the idea that we can build, large capital in the future with small amounts today. Right. And I can't speak that loudly enough that if you're positive cash flow, your balance sheet ultimately will get better. Does that mean you're going to meet all of your goals on time? I don't know. But it does mean that these two, it's the biggest reminder I have in the moment for these two financial statements to work together, right? Not to be discouraged over my asset base isn't high enough or my debt's too high, but to look at that cash flow and say, okay, well, how is that going to contribute to where I'm really trying to go? Okay, so these four corners are powerful when we put them together, and I'll kind of close this set of comments with my own surprise at how regular it is, how common it is to not have all four corners looked at together. I can't think of one new family that Fidir has worked with in the past few years that's come in with, that's my firm, sorry. So the sponsor of this program, Fidir Advisors, that I operate in Minneapolis, Minnesota, amazing clients, families, people we get to partner with in their own stewardship efforts. But it's not common to have to come in with these financial statements. And that's totally fine. It just underscores the need for the planning. But I want to encourage our listeners, get a platform for this. And I'll make an offer even right now. If you go to fideradvice.com/contact, FIDERE advice.com/contact, send a message there and ask for a login to one of, just say, can I please have a financial planning login? Okay, we spend a lot of money to provide two different options for what I'll call advanced financial planning with or without advice. So you don't need an advisory contract for this. It's an opportunity for you to do this exact thing that we're talking about in this program. And then those programs still don't give a kind of forward cash view in terms of just cash for monthly stuff, right? So monthly cash flow, but looking at how cash is handled every day going forward based on a certain amount of income and a certain amount of expenses that are generally knowable. So I want to encourage those things, the contact to Fidir for the logins, and also the website for this media program, stewardsview.com/blog, where I'll post that spreadsheet. And that's a kind of a supplement, if you will, to the basic financial planning platforms. Because when you have, and let me just tie it up this way, when you have the two financial statements together, when you have your dynamic puzzle box, you still don't know where your cash is going to be every day going forward. That's why I add the spreadsheet to these conversations. And that's why I write about that dynamic of building cash and building savings and building investment and building the balance sheet in the life cycle book. And again, I'll post that chapter as well. So there's a lot here that I think can be a help to you. If you know somebody that's needing help with these things, forward this episode to them. Encourage them. Ask them to log in to get their data together, whether or not they're working with a firm, mine or someone else's. So I think that can be a big help. With that, I thought about going into a case study today with this, but let me just say, if you've had life events, that really, really good to redo these steps, right? Reevaluate. You might be pleasantly surprised at what you have happening in your own financial picture, in your own puzzle box, and the freedom that can come from just knowing and then making decisions. So there's a lot of good that can come out. I talked briefly with a 2026 divorcee, dear woman, last Friday, August 14th, who'd been through this divorce process and was coming out the other side and wanting to make decisions anew from a new puzzle box, right? And this is the first thing that we did. So I'm looking forward to seeing her make clear decisions with her own assets, her own debts, her own income, her own expenses, not just any one of them. So I'll leave it there. But, any outcomes from that, if she permits me without her name to talk about down the road, I just might do that. But platform matters in this. It's a big deal to have a platform, to have a place to go for it. That's why I offer it up. Advisor collaboration can matter if it helps encourage you, if it helps get you some insight or some ideas, maybe if you know somebody that wants to walk with you through this. But I just want to encourage you to do this. You don't need an advanced plan or anything to, a CPA or a CFP to do this kind of work. You can do this very much on your own. I see a lot of successful people that do. So it's not that you shouldn't use an advisor. It's that you might just have somebody to collaborate with. That's my best thought on kind of using a professional in the process. But do make sure to get caught up on this if you're behind. It's so easy to set aside. Book it on your calendar. Tell somebody. Write down the goal and then pursue it and know what it looks like. Maybe even share it with key stakeholders when you're done. So those are my thoughts. The dynamic puzzle box is a very big deal. Nothing else can get done from a financial planning standpoint, literally, done with accuracy, done well. When it comes to income tax planning or investment planning or insurance planning or estate planning or retirement planning, nothing else can get done until we know what this puzzle box looks like. And it's the reason that I make sure this is built first before I ever go down the road into a planning engagement with any client. So I wanted to share these thoughts because they're so common in terms of misconceptions and myths, conversational kind of points of encouragement that happen, and then also just the need for a platform. So this is a very different episode in the sense that we're not talking about heavy economics or investment concepts, but we are talking about building blocks of a healthy financial picture. And I can't overstate how important that is. So if there are questions about this or you want to go over it, please email me or the team here. That's team@astewardsview.com, team@astewardsview.com. You can also find our social media pages online at A Steward's View. That's astewardsview.com, astewardsview.com. We've gone over a lot. It's been a joy to be back. I hope this has been a help, a blessing even, to you and anybody you decide to share it with. So from all of us here at ASV, we look forward to what's ahead. Next week, Lucian, I have a new series in mind for next week. I think we might do it to start next week. And this is a maybe. I haven't landed yet, so I'll kind of leave it open. But I think we're going to talk about the process of selecting professionals and how that happens instead of, what questions to ask, instead of even what I wrote down in the life cycle book and have shared on our blog, which is what to expect in the different types of offices. What about the process of selecting them, right? How can that look? I think that's worthy because here it is. That is the biggest decision. And I told this prospective client on Friday, I actually asked her, because she'd been through so much, I'm going to share this. I asked her not to make a decision on whether or not to work with Fidere Advisors, because she had so much going on, so much change. She appeared, and maybe I'm wrong, but she appeared overwhelmed. And just the thought of doing some of this work, that to get logged in, to get a platform, to get clarity first, and then make the big decision. You know, you don't interview somebody for an hour and then decide whether or not to marry them, right? I mean, might you want to go to Google and ask a question or two before you decide to sign up for some of their services, right? So, you know, I'm just going to encourage my industry for a moment here that we need to flip our training, our, you know, those of us that have been doing this for a while, our original training for brokerage and insurance and all the things about how to sell products and services on its head, and not sell anything and just serve and make it actually financial services. That's my call. Okay. So I hope you can do that, dear colleagues. But for the people that are consuming this as investors or as perhaps planning oriented minds or prospective clients of a firm, just get a good platform, get this built, do this, and then go down the road. But we will talk soon, if not next week and weeks ahead, about, I think we'll have a series on you know, professional selection, okay, and how that can work, and kind of what are the things to think about, not just what to ask. Okay, so we'll go there. That's my best guess. That's what we'll do next week with this soliloquy all built in. But until then, let's look together, go out and connect anytime at astewardsview.com. That's astewardsview.com. And thank you for joining. Please do be wise and decide well.
You've been listening to A Steward's View. To learn more about Fidere Advisors or speak with Aaron, visit fidereadvice.com. That's FIDERE advice.com. To listen to this and other episodes of A Steward's View, visit astewardsview.com. A Steward's View is brought to you by Fidere Advisors, a registered investment advisor offering financial planning and asset aggregation. Asset aggregation systems are designed to align portfolios across accounts into a single, globally optimized investment plan for families it serves. Fidere maintains liquidity of client capital at major custodians and utilizes asset managers that have shown consistent historical performance through excellent risk management. This program is not an offer to transact any securities and does not constitute a financial planning engagement. Information provided has been prepared from sources believed to be reliable, but is not guaranteed and does not represent all available data necessary for making financial decisions, and is for informational purposes only. Fidere and its representatives do not offer tax or legal advice through Fidere. Please consult the appropriate advisor. Fidere Advisors LLC is a registered investment advisor. To discuss your situation or to learn more about Fidere, please visit fidereadvice.com. That's FIDERE advice.com.